All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And again, as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class, I've decided to go through this 12-chapter or 12-lesson series from DotNetOdyessy.com that's entitled ASP.NET MVC Free Course. I have promised to do my best to keep every one of these presentations at 15 minutes or less time. So I am in the middle of Chapter 2 where we're creating our first ASP.NET application. All right? So, little bit confusing right here. All right? And the author says there's different ways that we can refer to our program once we start getting it built. Well, it's a little bit confusing. So what I'm going to do is, rather than go over this part, I'm going to jump down to the bottom here. We have no controller, so we're going to create one. So how do we create a controller? We come in here, and first of all, we don't need this particular file open, this route config, so I'm closing it. But to create a new controller, we right mouse click on the controller folder and we choose add and we choose controller. All right. And if you'll notice here, there are several different types of controllers we can choose. The top three start with MVC for Model View Controller. The bottom five are Web API, where API is Application Program Interface. We can have an empty controller, a controller that already provides read-write actions for us, a controller that has views that will put in a lot of code for us to allow us to do CRUD or create, read, update, and delete operations. All right, I believe we're going to do an empty one, but let's double check. All right. So I showed you the add controller. And as it says, select empty because we want to hand code it. All right. So again, empty is the one that's already chosen. We click add. Now, before I go back to the other one, in many ways, Microsoft has done an excellent job with this software, but it expects you to do things in return, such as, notice there that the word default is blued out, but the controller part is not. Controllers should always end with the word controller. Keep that in there. That's going to help in the routing mechanism as we go through it. All right? So, we're getting there. It says, give your controller a name. I have called mine home controller. Now, I'm going to type home in there where it says default, and I'm going to click add. And that should generate the text that you see right here. All right? But I want you to notice something. Right now, in views, there is nothing in there. I already showed you this. Let me cancel this and I'll bring it up again. The only thing that's in there is web config. The rest of it's empty. But notice when I right mouse click, choose add, choose controller, I want an empty one. I don't know why it's doing that, but it is. Empty. And we want to call this home controller. Don't put any blank spaces in here. Also, the C in the word controller should be capitalized, and any word that words you put in there, the first letter should be capitalized. It's just convention. So I've got home controller. I'm going to click add. Watch how my controllers changes and how my views changes. All right, so I click add. Should take a matter of seconds. Sometimes when you're first starting out like I am today, it can take up to a half minute or so. All right, not much in there. Except, notice we now have a file called homecontroller.cs. There it is. Since we created an empty controller, we also have a home folder All right, that home is going to be the same name as our controller name without the word controller on it. So I've got a home controller and a home folder. Since I chose empty project, there is nothing in that views home folder. All right. So the author says this is what's in there right now. So we can go back and look at it here. Or I said we can look at it here, or we can go back and look at it on the screen. But I'm just going to grab this stuff just so you see it. I'm going to right mouse click and choose copy. Why? I want to show you in just a second. I do want you to understand something. All right? I do want you to understand something. And that is that were I to come in here, and I'm just going to put in a comment. It is the same exact thing that the author is showing. Public class controller, home controller. What that means is our class that we're creating is called home controller. It automatically inherits from a built-in class called controller. That's what that means. The namespace, or kind of the folder in which this lives, is Hello World V1, which is the name of our project, and it's in a folder called controllers, right there. All right? Get rid of that. All right, and don't worry, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff that's in here in just a second. I should just leave that in there because it'll make it much easier. Okay? All right, then we've got something that says get home. We're going to talk more about get and post later. This is the action that we want to have happen when we run our program. All right? That's what that means. So let me get rid of all this stuff where I just copied it in. But we've got something neat now. All right? What do I mean? Well, we've actually got an action. Okay? It says the action is written for us by what's called the scaffolding template, but we're going to make some changes. All right? Right now it says we want to return an action result. And what that means is we want to be able to call a routine called index that will exist inside of our views folder, and whatever that returns is what we're going to want to return from here. And if that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. All right? We're going to change this, so instead of returning an action result, we're just going to return a string. And that string is going to say, hello world, excited to see, etc., etc. All right? So I'll grab that, copy that to the clipboard, go back to my project, and I want to change this from action result to string. All right? And I don't want this anymore. I now want that. All right? And what is that? Return, hello world, excited to see my first controller in action. Let's try to run the program and see what kind of results we get. So I'm going to say File, and I'm going to say Save All, and then I'm going to click the button here again. All right? When I do that, get rid of this. Whoops, I don't want that. When I go in and do that, what is going to happen is somewhere on a random port, that's what this is, the computer picks out a random port, it's now going to run the method in our home controller, which returned the string that said, hello world, excited to see my first controller in action. That right there that you see is exactly the same as this right here. So, in a nutshell, because I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible for right now. So, in a nutshell, what is happening here is we are running the program. When we run the program, the home controller calls the index method. The index method does this. How does it know the home controller and the index method? As I mentioned to you before, in app start, we've got route config, which says by default, so unless told otherwise, run the home controller and run the index method of the home controller. All right? Now, I want to quickly show you, because we are virtually finished with this particular chapter. All right? So I want to show you very quickly, I'm already at 10 minutes and I'm keeping it under 15, 3 different ways that we can run this program. Then I'm going to come back, finish up, okay, in just a couple seconds. So, you've already seen this. Notice what it says here. Just localhost colon and a random port. In my case, it's 57949. If you were to run this, you'd probably get a different port. I can also put in here /home, and it's not case sensitive. Notice if I hit enter, nothing changes. If we leave this out, we tell it to call the default controller, and the default controller is home. So I can also come in here and add home if I want to. All right? And if I want to, I can tell it to call the default action, which is index. So there's 3 different ways here that I can come in, all right, and I can tell it localhost port number, all right, you've already seen that. Localhost port number /home, or local port number /home/index. All 3 of those, for what we have on our system right now, will do the same thing. And I think, am I missing anything? Localhost /. Is that what I put? Yep. All right. They all will call this same method by default. Finally, it says the request with the URL has reached the routing engine because we did not supply a controller and an action name. As I mentioned, it used the default home and the default index as we defined them in route config, or as was defined for us. The request was forwarded to the home controller, which called the index method. We told it, instead of returning an action result, we told it to return that string, which was sent to the browser. Okay? It says here there's a few things to be noted. First, right now we've used the controller. We use the controller as our view and as our model. So we're going to get into the view part in the next chapter, and I'll be back with that shortly.